When we're young, we speak loudly. We share everything: our goals, our heartbreaks, our opinions, even our fears. It's how we feel seen. It's how we feel alive. But with age, something shifts. Mature men don't necessarily stop talking. They simply begin choosing what not to say. Not out of secrecy, not out of shame, but because they've learned. Some experiences don't need to be explained. Some emotions become too deep for words. And sometimes, silence is more honest than conversation. This silence isn't empty. It's filled with reflection, memory, and meaning. In fact, the things mature men choose to do alone often say more than anything they'd ever post or confess. So today, we're entering that quiet space, a space not everyone sees. A private world where seasoned men reclaim parts of themselves, not to hide them, but to protect them, because as life becomes more complex, simplicity becomes sacred. And perhaps the first thing on that list is an act that seems small, even mundane, yet holds the quiet power to restore a man's spirit. He doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't post about it. He simply ties his shoes, steps out the door, and walks. No music, no headphones, no destination. He walks not to get anywhere, but to return to himself. There's no pace to follow, no goal to check off. Sometimes it's a quiet neighborhood. Sometimes it's a forest trail. But always it's a moment that belongs only to him. As he walks, the noise of the world falls away. The headlines, the deadlines, the expectations, they fade, step by step, into the rhythm of his breathing. The sound of gravel underfoot, the rustle of wind through leaves, these are the voices he listens to now. It's not about cardio. It's not about steps tracked on a smart device. It's about stillness in motion, clarity without effort, healing that doesn't need words. He may pass people, but he doesn't need to smile, wave, or explain, because the man walking alone isn't lonely. He's recharging, he's remembering, he's letting go. In this simple act, he finds something modern life rarely offers: a space that expects nothing, a pace that doesn't rush, and a silence that feels like home. And when the body finds silence, the mind begins to speak, but instead of saying it out loud, he writes, somewhere in a drawer. There's a notebook no one has ever seen. Its pages are filled with thoughts that never became conversations, letters that were never sent, truths that no one asked to understand. He writes, not to impress, not to publish. There's no audience. There's no applause. There's only the quiet honesty that comes when the pen meets the page. These aren't diary entries. They are fragments of memory, moments of regret, questions without answers. They're the things he couldn't say when he was expected to be strong. They're the words that only silence allowed him to find. Sometimes it's a single sentence. Sometimes just a date. Sometimes it's a storm of ink that spills across 10 pages. He writes, when the world feels too heavy, when his own thoughts grow too loud, when he needs to empty the weight without breaking apart, no one will read them. That's the point. The words exist for one purpose only: to hold him together. To write is to breathe. Without the pressure of being understood, it is the space where he meets the most important listener of all, himself. And when the ink runs dry, he closes the notebook without ceremony. No one asks what he wrote, and he never offers to tell. But between those whispered lines, sometimes a melody begins to play. Not for the world, just for him. There's a song they never play out loud. It's not in any playlist shared with friends. It's tucked away maybe in an old CD. Maybe deep inside a phone reserved for moments when no one is watching. When that melody plays, they don't sing along. They close their eyes. Because that one song doesn't bring joy. It brings memory of a place, a voice, a version of themselves long gone. There's a film too. One they've watched more than a dozen times. Not for entertainment, but because it understands something in them that no one else ever could. They know every scene. Still, when a certain moment arrives, they pause just to feel the ache rise again. They don't cry in front of others. But when the lights are low and no one's around, they let go. This isn't weakness. It's the exact opposite. It takes strength to face those memories without flinching, without distraction, to allow old wounds to breathe. Instead of burying them, these songs and films are not just art. They are quiet rituals, private doors to places no one else has access to. And when the final note fades, or the credits roll, he doesn't explain what it meant. He just sits there, still. Because some stories aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be felt. But memory doesn't live only in sounds. Sometimes, it lingers in familiar places, the ones they return to alone, without ever inviting anyone along. It's not a fancy restaurant. No photos are taken. No updates posted. Just a quiet booth, in a place that hasn't changed much, even if everything else has. He orders the same dish every time. Not because it's the best meal in town, but because it reminds him of a time when life was simpler, or perhaps, when he was. The waiter doesn't ask many questions, and that's what he likes. No small talk. No need to explain. Just food and memory served on the same plate. This isn't about nostalgia for show. He doesn't bring anyone here. Not his friends. Not even his family. This place is personal. Sacred. A small space where the world stops spinning. He sits. He eats slowly. He remembers. A first date that happened in this very corner. A conversation with his father over coffee. The way the light looked on a rainy Tuesday in 1994. No one needs to know he was here. No one needs to understand what it means. Because sometimes, revisiting the past doesn't require an audience, just an open seat. And yet, sometimes memories aren't enough. He needs more than reflection. He needs distance, a real shift in space. That's when he leaves without a word. On a trip meant only for him. There's no map. No plan. He just grabs the keys and leaves. No one asks where he's going because no one knows. Not even him. Sometimes it's early morning, when the streets are still half asleep. Sometimes it's late at night, when headlights are the only things moving. He doesn't turn on the radio. He doesn't check his phone. The silence of the engine and the rhythm of the road are enough. He's not trying to escape anyone. He's trying to get away from himself, from the weight of expectations, from questions he doesn't want to answer, from the man he's had to be all week. The road doesn't care about titles, or mistakes, or who texted back. The road only asks one thing: keep going. So he does. Past neighborhoods he's never noticed, through towns with names he'll forget, stopping only when his breath slows down again. He might pull over to a field, watch the sky shift colors in silence. He might sit at a roadside diner, order a coffee, and not say a word. Then without ceremony he turns around and goes back. Home. To routine. To familiar walls. But he comes back different. Not because of where he went, but because of what he left behind, even if just for a while. That journey, without words, without a goal, isn't aimless at all. It's how he resets, how he remembers who he is, beneath all the roles he carries. And when the driving ends, and he's home again, there's something he still keeps tucked away. Not miles on the odometer, but quiet messages, handwritten letters, never sent, never seen. They're still there, tucked deep in the phone's memory, in an old notebook, or saved as a draft with no name. Messages never sent, letters never mailed, words never spoken out loud. He reads them again, not to reopen wounds, but to trace where the pain once lived. Sometimes it's just a single line: I'm sorry I hurt you. Other times, it's page long, full of the things he couldn't say when the moment was still alive. He doesn't delete them. He doesn't send them. He doesn't need to. Because some messages were never meant to reach someone else. They were meant to reach him, to remind him of who he was, what he felt, and how far he's come since then. Reading those words is not about holding on. It's about learning to let go. Quietly. Not with fireworks or final talks, but with the gentle sigh that comes when he finally says to himself, "It's time." There's a strange kind of peace in that. No blame. No begging for closure. Just acceptance. He lets the message stay. As a bookmark in his story, not to be reread often, but not erased either. Because forgetting isn't always healing. Sometimes, healing is remembering, without wanting anything to change. And when the past no longer holds him hostage, he turns his gaze inward, not with judgment, but with a quiet kind of grace. A softness that says, "This is me, and that's okay." Ender, it used to be just a glance, a quick check, a grooming ritual, hair in place, shirt tucked in, move on. But now, something shifted. He pauses, and really looks, not at flaws, not at what's fading, but at what's real. He stares into the mirror and meets a familiar stranger, a face shaped by time, lined with stories no one else has read. Each wrinkle, a season, each scar, a decisión. And for the first time, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't wish to rewind the clock. He doesn't miss the man he used to be. Because this version, quiet, slower, but deeper, feels more true than ever before. There's no need to impress, no performance left to give, no one to convince, just him, and the quiet acknowledgement, "I'm still here, and I'm enough." Hezir. It's not pride, it's not regret, it's simply presence, to see oneself fully, without needing to explain, defend, or compare. And when that distance between who he was and who he is finally softens, he learns the hardest truth of all, how to let go, without needing anyone else to understand. There comes a time when holding on feels heavier than letting go. And so, they release, not out of weakness, not in defeat, but in quiet recognition. Some chapters are complete. It could be a dream they once fought for, a version of success that no longer fits, a person they once loved deeply, fully, but who now belongs to the past. Or perhaps it's a role they carried for decades, provider, protector, leader, not because it was asked of them, but because it was all they knew. Now, they let it rest, not with resentment, but with a gentle bow. No one hears the moment it happens. There is no ceremony, no grand announcement. No one claps. Just a breath, a stillness, and space where weight used to be. They walk forward, not lighter, but clearer. Not because they forgot, but because they forgave. No need to explain what they've chosen to leave behind, because the letting go isn't for others to understand. It's for them to live. And so, these 8 things, they're not signs of loneliness. They're a new kind of language, the quiet vocabulary of a man who has learned the value of stillness. There comes a moment in a man's life when silence is no longer emptiness. It becomes clarity. With time, you stop explaining. You no longer feel the urge to be understood by everyone. Because you've come to understand yourself, you keep things to yourself, not because they are secrets, but because they are sacred. They are yours. Private not by fear, but by choice. What you walk through, what you carry, what you let go. These are no longer stories for approval. They are chapters of becoming. Being seen is no longer the goal. Being whole quietly, deeply, on your own terms, that is enough. So when a man no longer shares everything, it's not a wall, it's a boundary, a gentle one, drawn by someone who has grown past noise and lives in a quieter kind of truth. And you, what is it that you now hold quietly, just for yourself?